Welcome, Reds, to the 100% United pod. I'm your host, TC, joined again by my co-host, Scott. Hello, pal.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. Yourself?
Oh, just about surviving this quarantine.
That-
Still indoors.
yeah, I'm lucky enough. I'm allowed out, so I'm not in England, so all the states. So
Yeah.
I've got a bit of fresh air. Been to a couple of restaurants and whatnot, so not bad at all.
Well, they have started reopening things here, but there's just too many people. It's just too much. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's there's no middle ground, is there?
No, it's either nobody or too many. Anyway, carry on.
Anyway, on today's episode, we trawl through the latest Manchester United news. The lads are back in training. We go through the recent financial figures released by United. We look at the latest transfer rumours around Old Trafford, and finally reminisce about that magic night in Moscow 12 years ago. First though, Scott, not a great surprise that finances are down in the current climate. There's good news and bad news, really, with the third quarter finances released. The main thing that they released basically was the 28 million lost, 8 million for the postponed Spurs game, and 20 million for the money they're going to have to send back to the TV companies. Any main takeaways from the finances from you?
I mean, it's pretty bad reading, right? To see that the debt is getting more and more. For years, we seemed like we were chipping away at the debt, and now it seems it's just come back on overnight. To be honest with you, I think if every Premier League club were to announce their figures, they'd be about the same. But we're the only ones who are actually documenting it, right?
Yes, you're right. Of course, if everyone's finances go down, then of course it lessens the blow for us. The good thing about the debt having risen is that's down to a large fluctuation in the exchange rate, because the debt's in dollars and the pound and the dollar has been fluctuating. So that wouldn't nearly be as much if that wasn't the case. So that's something that balances out over time. It's not like we've been taking out more cash. We did pay the Harry Maguire fee in full and a large chunk of the Aaron Wan-Bissaka fee as well, which means we're not going to have to pay any more for Maguire this summer. And it does mean that it lessens that big figure. The papers were going wild with it. The cash reserves are actually £90 million still, and we've got £150 million in credit reserves as well. So that's the plus point in terms of people like yourself who are looking to get some transfers in. It means that we do have that power that other clubs don't.
Yeah.
Other things, commercial revenues have increased. The thing is with these figures is they're the third quarter figures, and it's the fourth quarter figures that are going to be absolutely disastrous, because all of the games that are postponed, we're going to have to write them off. And our benevolence in paying the match day staff throughout this period is going to hit us quite hard, because of course we're not making any money on those match days, but paying a full quota of staff.
Yeah, but at least we maintain the image of doing things the right way and not trying to furlough staff or get government assistance or what have you.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest with you, looking through the figures, I looked through them in quite a bit of depth. It's not as bad as the papers are making out. It's a kind of a case of we got to do things in a right way going forward, but we're not in a situation that we can't maneuver our way out of at all. And one thing's interesting is that, of course, the Champions League qualification, which hangs in the balance with the season not certain to continue and not certain how it's going to continue, is that Adidas clause in the contract. The 2-year absence from the Champions League costs us about 22.5 million a year. So that qualification for the Champions League is really crucial, because 2 years on the trot and that gets triggered.
Yeah, and City have just lodged their appeal, right? So it remains to be seen what's going to happen with that.
Well, that's actually great news. The appeal is slated for June the 8th, 3 days. So we're going to know. If we're playing football, we're going to know what we're in for, whether we have to be chasing 5th or 4th. Mm-hmm. And we'll also know if the season's going to get annulled as well. So that is good news, because the big worry I know you were worried about was City and the CAS were going to just put it off, get past that date when the new European season starts, and they just whack it onto next year then, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
So that is very good news indeed. One thing that people are sort of talking about is the TV deal. Of course, if the TV companies are demanding money to be paid back, is the idea of maybe the big clubs who really pull in big TV numbers abroad are going it alone and not going with a group TV deal with the next round of bidding. What do you think of that? Do you think that might be one of the fallouts from this whole pandemic?
Perhaps, because I think that every team's going to fight tooth and nail to not have to give back that TV money, right? They're actually right. I mean, I guarantee that Man United against someone else gets more viewers than Burnley against someone else.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, on one hand, people argue that that's why the Premier League is so popular, is because it is balanced. There's not you saw, Real Madrid and Barcelona, they pulled away from the rest of the league for so many years, didn't they? Because they were allowed to do their own TV deals. Whereas the Premier League it's kind of like, in American sport, that the team at the bottom gets the biggest, they get the first pick, don't they, in the draft, and they get the biggest payout, so then they can then flourish in the next season. The Premier League is not as balanced as that, but it's the same kind of thing with that TV deal, isn't it?
It is. And one thing I actually do maybe see happening, taking a leaf out of American sports, is maybe the introduction of a salary cap.
Yeah.
And allowing there to be even more parity amongst the teams.
Yeah, I think that might be a good way to go. We see it in other sports, don't we? See it in rugby union in England. I mean, they're talking about it in the Championship. I think it might be necessary. I mean, you could maybe do the thing where you have one or two players who are allowed above it. They do that in the MLS, don't they? You've got your star player.
Yeah.
Is it one or two over there?
I think it's one.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure though.
Yeah. That might make sense. But then, of course, the players who are already on a big salary will keep that because the contract's already been drawn up.
Yeah, but the days of packing your squad full of world-class talent and paying them top dollar it's got to stop, I think, because when there isn't the unbelievable pot of money to keep digging into, then sacrifice is going to have to be made.
Yeah, I mean, it could, in a way. Of course, we pay massive wages, don't we? And then we struggle to get people who are not performing off the wage, but we struggle to sell them. So that would prevent us doing that for starters. And it would put a massive onus on youth players coming through as well. And as we know, we've got a great stable of youth players and young players in the first team as well. So it could possibly play into our hands.
Yeah, you certainly hope so.
Yeah. Well, another thing hitting the news, financial led as well, is United and seems to be Konami and Pro Evolution Soccer led, suing Football Manager. You must be tearing your hair out, Scott. You've won a couple of Champions Leagues, Premier Leagues. You've been tearing it up, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I have. They're not going to take the badge away from me.
But yeah, what do you think of that? I mean, I do understand from a licensing point of view what United are doing, but also from a PR point of view, and in terms of getting fans on board and getting new fans. I know it seems a bit weird, but it's true. People fall in love with teams in different ways and get to know teams in different ways. I kind of think they've missed a trick there. I think it's a bit of a PR blooper.
Well, to be honest, this is the first year that in Football Manager that Juventus have not. They're not in the game. They're called Zebra, and I think that was due to license. I mean, it was obviously due to licensing and contractual issues. But I actually think that the people that are suing. Sorry,
if I can just interject there. That Juve are actually sponsored by Konami as well as of last year, aren't they?
Yeah.
So that's you might hit the nail on the head there. Well, it might be Konami leading that.
They are, definitely. That's what I was going to say, because they've just put this whole sponsor into Pro Evolution Soccer is sponsoring us. It's the first year it's happening. I think that Konami are suing Sega instead of us suing Sports Interactive.
And who's up front? Ron Arid or Rolando?
Yeah, someone like that. Ron Goggs. Do you remember Ron Goggs? Yeah.
Oh, I remember them all, There was, especially early 90s, there were some outrageous ones, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think it was Sensible Soccer, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and they were shot to bits.
Yeah. But yeah, it seems, I mean, I think United have come out of this whole thing, pandemic, with decent PR. They've handled it well. The players seem to have come across very well as well. I know it's a little bit of a silly one. I'm having a laugh about it because I know you've been playing it to pass the hours. But yeah, I think have you signed Sancho yet?
I have, yeah.
Of course you have.
I have. I'm 5 years in. My long-term objective, obviously, is to get 10 Champions Leagues before Liverpool.
Okay.
And have Mason Greenwood be the top scorer of United. So I've still got a while to go. Yeah.
Good stuff, mate. Well, the lads are back in training, of course. We've seen them standing 2 meters apart and whatnot. And they all look in fine spirit. David De Gea looks like he's aged a bit, doesn't he?
Blimey.
The state of him.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because all Kante's come back with hair, and Ashley Young's got a head of hair now.
A fine head of hair as well.
Pretty good, right? What's he been doing the last 20 years?
Oh man, he looks younger now than with his skinhead.
Yeah, he does.
Much better. But one of the things that's come out is that Bruno has been setting all kind of speed records for himself, and he's about the third fastest in the squad. So it just again highlights the attitude of Bruno Fernandes. Ryan Giggs have been crowing about him as well. Echoing what you had said actually when we were on the Eric Cantona pod we did not so long ago, and you were saying that he lifted everyone around him, and Giggsy actually compared him to Cantona as well. and Van Persie, but said, like we did, that he's not comparable as a player, but he has lifted that whole squad, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. And one thing you've got to say, the main difference probably between the Portuguese and the English league is the speed and the intensity. So it's great to see that he's come over. He's probably realised that he needs to work on that a bit, and he needs to improve his quickness. And to do it behind closed doors is just the best attitude you can possibly imagine, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it actually, and I know Ollie's given an interview recently where he said, I don't know if I can say this quote on our podcast, but rather have a hole in the squad than an a-hole.
Yeah.
I'll put it like that, shall I? Now, it's an interesting one. It's a very fine line for me. We've discussed throughout the season. We've obviously been on air throughout the season, and we thought there were holes in the squad, didn't we? Going into the season, we were begging Fernandes to sign at the end of the summer. We were begging to sign another striker as well. And it seems that we did struggle. And then when we got the striker in Ighalo, when we got Bruno Fernandes in January, then it started to click. So it's a fine line with having a good attitude within the squad, which we all want. And we all want people who want to play for the club. But at the same time, selling people and not replacing them straight away, it's a fine line, isn't it?
It is, but I like the comments from Solskjaer because it sort of shows a ruthlessness and hopefully acts as a kick up the backside for a bunch of other people in the squad.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he did say there's no people like that in the squad now. He's happy the attitude's improved. And there's certain players who seem to be not in the good books. In most, I guess, Matic, Fred, to name but two, who have seemed to turn it round, haven't they? In terms of in Ollie's eyes. So that's a good sign. If you are if you are harsh in terms of what you want, you have to also be able to see when people are turning it around. So yeah, it was. I know some people are saying no, you shouldn't be saying that, and some people are saying it's great, but it is a fine line. And look, if we didn't sign Ighalo and Fernandes and had left those holes in the squad, we wouldn't have gone on this 11-match unbeaten run, would we? Going into the break,
probably not. Definitely not without Fernandes, but.
No.
Ighalo has also popped up with some very important goals. And I mean, his contract's running out next week, right? On Friday. Mm-hmm. So what are we going to do with that?
You know, for me, I was thinking about this and it just seems that United are waiting for as long as possible to see if the season did get curtailed, then obviously it makes sense to send him back for now, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Whereas if it continues, you don't want to be paying him, you don't want to extend the contract or buy him outright and then football not come back until Christmas.
Of course.
So I guess they're playing it by ear. He seems keen. He's always wearing his United gear, isn't he? When in every picture and video he does by the hour. But yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? There's been no news, and I expected us to have wrapped it up by now.
Yeah, you're right. And I just got to say, I'm not digging anyone out, but isn't it funny how Paul Pogba gets so much criticism for what he posts on Instagram? And then you look at Ighalo. I mean, I'm not criticising it whatsoever, but he's posting daily photo shoots. And I think if Pogba was doing that, there'd be uproar. It would be front page news of, tossing around this and that. And it's just funny how there are double standards, I feel.
Who'd be digging them out? You. At least you dig out Ighalo.
No.
No, I'm joking.
No, I'm not. I just couldn't believe it, right? He's doing proper photo shoots.
You know what? With
good for him, because he's living the dream. Good for him.
He is. And the thing is that we've always been quite firm in terms of like with Pogba's performance on the pitch and when he says things like I need a new challenge. But people do need to move with the times in terms of it as social media here and there. At least Ighalo does blooming love the club. It's very obvious.
Yeah.
But the club have to do what's best for us, I suppose. So yeah, but it's getting close now, isn't it?
Of course. And other news, I mean, it's pretty obvious that we're in for Moussa Dembele as well. And now that the France season's been cancelled and Lyon aren't going to get Champions League football, that could be an option as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll get on to transfers in a little bit after we just go through what the league are planning to do. But yeah, it does seem we're weighing up our options on that. Luke Shaw weighed in as well, praising Ollie, saying he's really turned his season around. He's a great guy to chat to. Again, it's a fine line, isn't it? Yeah. Between having a manager you like and a manager who's getting results. When a manager's getting results and you like him, that's the best scenario, of course. But at the same time, you don't want to be every player's best mate. So it's a fine line. But at the moment, we've got nothing to complain about. Unbeaten in how many months now? So not bad at all. One other thing Giggs said that caught my eye as well is he was saying that Dylan Levitt is one of the best in training. Of course, one of our young midfielders got his debut at the end of last year, didn't he? I think in the Europa League.
Yep.
I know you're a fan of Levitt as well, alongside James Garner.
Yeah.
So yeah, good signs for Giggs, and he said he wants to push him into the Wales squad. Potentially before the Euros, and he's hoping obviously he gets more minutes for United, but it's congested in that midfield now, isn't it? We've got McTominay coming back. I mean, for years we've been struggling in the midfield area, and now we're looking at a situation where if Pogba was to go, we wouldn't be in those dire straits we would have been a year or 2 years ago.
Definitely not. And just a player that plays well beyond his years. He seems like he's a really, from what I've seen in the youth games, he just seems like he's head and shoulders above everyone.
Yeah.
And I really hope that he's given a proper chance to succeed at United, like James Garner as well. I heard might be going on loan as well. Maybe a loan's good for Levitt as well.
Yeah, I think if we can use those loans in the right way, as we haven't done in the past. And I like a nice Welshman in the squad, don't I?
Yeah, you love him.
Always, just like you like a Scotsman.
Oh, I love him. But loans might be the way to go now, right? If Championship clubs aren't able to afford transfer fees, they're gonna look to loans. And as you say, we have a stable full of young players that could probably do with some experience, and so that might be a good option.
One thing I just thought is we haven't had a good old Irishman in the squad for a while, haven't we?
No, not since John O'Shea.
No, for years we had Republic, Northern Irishmen coming in, being a bedrock of the team. Always had a good British spine, didn't we?
Yeah.
We haven't had a good Irishman for a long time.
Yeah, you're right.
I miss him.
Good call. Yeah.
Look, the Premier League say they're as confident as they can be that they're going to start on the allotted date. La Liga have now, just in the last few hours, come out and said, the president said that June the 8th, they're slated to return as well. We got the Bundesliga starting as well. I'll just say with the Bundesliga, it's a bit different. Of course, in the UK, they're on lockdown. In Spain, they've been on full lockdown. I've actually been stuck in Germany, and I know from first hand, there's been nothing close to the kind of lockdown for the general public that England and Spain has seen. I mean, they've made compulsory masks to go into shops and restaurants and whatnot, but everyone's out and about doing their thing. You can pretty much go into anywhere and do whatever you want. So them starting in terms of public perception doesn't have that sort of that gap between the general public and what they regard as superstars. Whereas in the Premier League in Spain, the general public have been blooming tearing their hair out, locked indoors, and then you see the Premier League and La Liga going out and blooming banging heads at corners and all the rest of it. So there is that gap in terms of optics for the public, I guess.
Yeah, you got to be right with that. And I know that the UK introduced this rule yesterday that everybody coming into the country has to go under a 14-day quarantine. So I don't know what's going to happen when LASK have to come and play the return leg, or when Madrid come and play City in the Champions League or something like that. It seems like it's going to be. There's still a lot more paperwork to go over.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Actually, I meant to pick up on that earlier. That's a crucial thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We are looking at, and the problem is you can't even say, look, we'll go to a neutral venue outside the UK, because then when we come back in, we'd have to do a 14-day quarantine or a self-isolation.
Exactly.
So, and they said that they're not going to make an exception at this stage in time for professional sports athletes as well. So that is a big, big problem. Indeed, I know the French league's obviously stopped. They can't play in France, but they can go to neutral territory and play those home games in inverted commas. But another massive hurdle we have to get over before getting it started again. It looks like it is going to start up again now. Obviously, the Liga starting, Bundesliga. I can't see the Premier League not giving it a go. Mm-hmm. Have you heard some of these outrageous ideas about fans noise and blooming videos and all the rest? Do you fancy any of them?
No, I think they're all nonsense. I really do. Sticky balls.
Oh my God. Well, the sticky balls they're complaining about, of course, but they're talking about cardboard cutouts. They're talking about putting music on the tannoy. They're talking about selecting music for goal celebrations and stuff like that. I mean, come off it.
I think you meant to say public address system.
Oh, sorry.
Got you on your trademarks.
But yeah, it's all a bit bonkers, isn't it? I mean, I know we've all been watching a few more closed doors games. I mean, look, when we watched the last game in the Europa League when this was all starting, it was all right, wasn't it? It was novel. You thought it was just going to be a one-off.
Because we were watching United.
Yeah, we smashed them.
That's why.
I think that's a good point, actually. I think watching United, you can kind of put it to the back of your mind. When you're watching a game that doesn't have too much of a bearing on our team or you, then it's not the same. It can be a bit weird, kind of a bit tedious.
Yeah, it definitely can.
You only have to look at the amount of people who watch United every single game but won't watch the pre-season friendlies. I know we like to have a watch, but there's a lot of fans who don't even bother watching them because they don't think they're worth it. Now they're packed
Yeah.
full of fans, but obviously you've got the weird substitutions and stuff like that going on. So this is kind of a sort of hybrid of that, isn't it?
It is. But one thing that German football is famous for is the crowd, right? And
Hmm.
how immersive the crowd gets, and it's so weird. It's watching training matches, and it reminds me of when you go into the ground an hour early, and you're like, why did I come this early? There's nothing going on. It reminds me of that.
Now you know why our dads were so when they say you go, oh come on, let's go in early, see the players. Are like, oh come on, let's go,
Yeah.
let's nip in the pub or something, like "Yeah, come on. But yeah, you're right. It is, and also I mean I was just watching. We're halfway through the German games today, and there wasn't one home team winning as far as I saw. It was all the away teams again,
It's crazy, right?
and I mean there must be some players who actually will play better in this environment, knowing they're still playing, official matches, but not struggling under some players have been sort of under pressure from their own fans, if you like, or away fans, particularly like to get them. But then some players thrive on it. It's like, I say, Cristiano Ronaldo, for instance, he loves getting abuse, doesn't he? Because he just rises to the
Yeah.
occasion, and without people to egg him on, I mean, he's good enough to play well anyway. But yeah, it's a really weird one. I don't think it can. I think maybe you could see out this season behind closed doors, but going into next season doing the whole thing as well, I think you might start losing a lot of fans. Really,
Yeah, well, they're also saying that they're going to pack stadiums 25% full, right? Like 1 in 4.
yeah.
So there's going to be 3 seats difference between everybody. But I think that's going to be even worse. It's going to be like the youth games when there are 500 people and you can hear people screaming.
And the thing is, it's all for show, isn't it? It's silly. It's like here you have to wear a mask when you enter the restaurant, but then when you sit down, you can take the mask off. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
what and you all have to get into the stadium. It's a weird time. Anyway, hitting on the Bundesliga, Bayern Munich apparently came out there. They're in for Jadon Sancho. Now, people who were normally quite good for Bayern Munich news have said that's rubbish. They're not in for him. It seems like they want Leroy Sané, and they are basically just trying to sort of push City on the price, I guess. I can't see, and apparently Borussia Dortmund don't want to sell to Bayern either.
Of course they don't.
But the keeper said that if we don't get Sancho, then we are still looking at Traore from Wolves as a backup plan. Are you still against that? Are you still a fan of just if we can't get that sort of blue chip player in terms of Sancho, then we stick with Greenwood and maybe get centre forward?
Yeah, but I've actually got a real soft spot for Adama Traore.
You do?
I think he'd be fantastic for us. Yeah, I do. He's so direct.
What is it? Those guns?
Yeah, he's like if you stick Daniel James in the gym for 5 years, he'd come out like that. Yeah, I like him. I think it'd be a good option, to be honest. And I think the Wolves are in a lot of trouble as well because they've been paying agents' fees out of their bum for 5 years now to George Mendes, and they're probably in a lot of trouble too.
I think Danny James would have to have a few of Pep Guardiola's special potions to get on that level, mate. let alone 5 years in the gym.
Your protein diet. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see with that one. Of course, we want Jadon Sancho. That would be the dream ticket. In terms of a gala, we mentioned it earlier. They're still talking about Raul Jimenez from Wolves as well as a potential replacement. What do you think? I mean, seems quite a lot for someone who we wouldn't really want to be first choice.
Well, I mean, if you compare his best season this season up to Martial's season, they're really similar. And you wouldn't say that Martial's been tearing it up this year, would you?
I wouldn't say he's raised his level. He hasn't been tearing it up, though. Yeah,
Exactly. But I think Martial has a much higher ceiling than Raul Jimenez.
Of course he does. And he's a lot more fluid player as well. I mean, there's one argument that it's nice to have a proper out-and-out striker up top as an option, not for every week, but also with the players we got in Rashford and Greenwood and maybe Jadon Sancho coming on. We want them to be fluid. We want them to be switching positions all the time. Another name that popped up again, it feels like we're going back to the future, was Ben Yedder. Monaco struggling financially. We've been linked recently to him. Now, we were saying last summer we wanted Bruno Fernandes, and if we had to get an emergency strike, and we were talking about Ben Yedder, if we got him this summer, it'd be bonkers, wouldn't it? We get Bruno in January and Ben Yedder in the summer. Do you think the ship sailed on that one?
I would think so, to be honest. 29-year-old striker probably doesn't fit the mould of that Solskjaer's looking for in the long term. Although he would probably be a cheap option. I'm thinking about Jimenez. What would Wolves accept for Jimenez? Probably 70+ million, right?
Yeah.
If they're going to sell him to us.
Yeah, they're talking about 60 million.
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's a no-goer for me.
Yeah, same here.
I'm more interested in Dembele from Lyon, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other name just to mention, we were out after him at the end of January. Apparently, we inquired Adolfo Gaich from San Lorenzo, Argentine, under-23 international, only 21 years old. He's got 12 million quid release clause compared to Lewandowski. And as I said, we were in for him. PSG are actually looking at him now. So that's just one to keep an eye on. If PSG are going for him, it's just to see whether we were really interested and whether we go back in on him as well. Mm-hmm. Ladis.com has said that regarding Paul Pogba that Mino Raiola has opened talks with Juve. Now, the reason I bring this up, I know we don't like to talk too much about Pogba, or maybe we do it all the blooming time, in terms of transfers. Look, did we have L'Equipe, didn't we, saying that he was getting close to a Juve move, and now we've got another French outlet saying Raiola's opened talks with Juve. To me, it seems like this might be Raiola-led in terms of prepping the French outlets. Because, if a player's from a country or playing in a club in that country, then people normally respect the news outlets from that country a bit more. What do you think of that? Do you think it's a tactic in terms of to try and get a higher wage for Pogba? Or do you think there is actually serious talks between Raiola and Juve?
Probably a bit of both, if I'm honest. But I really don't know what to believe.
Fingers in all the pies.
Yeah, I don't know what to believe, because one minute you're reading that Juventus have all these financial troubles and they're trying to get rid of Ramsey, they're trying to get rid of Rabiot, they're trying to get rid of all these players. So to bring in Pogba really doesn't match up, does it?
No, especially with the wage cap that they an individual wage cap, a club-led wage cap, £151,000 that Juve were apparently bringing in. And then that doesn't really fit in with that, but maybe they will have a couple of exceptions. I don't know. It seems like Raiola up to his old tricks, but it is popping up quite a lot in the French press. So I don't know. It goes on and on, doesn't it?
Well, I think the English press don't believe him anymore, so it's the only place he can really pop up.
Yeah. Are you still dreaming of a Pogba and Bruno alongside one triumvirate?
I am.
Yeah?
Just for a little bit at least. Come on.
You know what? I mean, despite everything, it would be worth just seeing how good it might be. One thing I do want is I want Bruno to keep that position that he plays in. When we're getting linked to Philippe Coutinho and all the rest of it, I'm thinking, no, I don't want a player like that and then Bruno to be pushed back into the midfield. I want Bruno to be leading this team, especially with his new speed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But yeah, it's same old with Pogba. We get one story one week, one story the next week. So we will see. End on a positive note, Scott, of course. Everyone's been raving this week about the throwback to 2008 Champions League and Premiership double, of course. But we won in Moscow 12 years ago on the 21st, of course. Both got magic memories of that night, of course, Scott. What sticks out in terms of a memory, apart from maybe the Terry penalty miss and the Edwin van der Sar save? What sticks out for you?
Well, the first thing I think about when I think of that final is I was watching it in the pub in Los Angeles, and of course getting as rowdy as I usually do. And the moment that Didier Drogba got sent off, and I remember I was screaming everything under the sun at the TV, and this huge Chelsea lout grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, and he was going to kill me, I felt. And this little fella came in. I mean, he was a little ginger fella I called Scalzi, and he came in and backed me up. And I remember thinking, God, if we win this, I'm going to get a right beating. And I remember just thinking, bruises will heal. It's going to be worth it. Just take your beating, win the Champions League, and you'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, we of course met watching United in that particular establishment, and I always thought we called him Scalzi, but he's a doppelganger for Nicky Butt, wasn't he?
The second you said it, I was just like, what have I been doing? He was an absolute doppelganger, but I'd gone too far, hadn't I? I couldn't change my mind because of you.
That was actually, I must say that the Drogba sending off was it was a great moment because we knew they were a big penalty taker down, and actually, if he hadn't got sent off, then Terry wouldn't have been taking that last penalty. It might have been Drogba, like he took it, didn't he, against Bayern Munich? Mm-hmm. So it was actually a monster moment with him. We slapped Vidic, and then I think it was mayhem, wasn't it?
Tevez got involved.
Yeah. Terry couldn't believe it.
I mean, I know you were there. You were there. So what's your favourite moment apart from running past the Chelsea pubs, screaming winners' songs?
You know what? It was fantastic. We really did paint the town red. The United fans. It was a weird atmosphere in Moscow. There were loads and loads of soldiers around, and not the friendly type you ask for directions either. And so the big talk before was there's going to be loads of flare ups between Chelsea and United fans, and that didn't really happen. But wherever you went in Moscow, you could just hear the sound of United singing. All you had to do was follow it, and you'd go around the corner, and there'd just be a pub spewing United red and fans out, and we're just singing it. So it was a fantastic day in the lead up to the game, and the game was so late in Moscow. It actually started on one day and finished on the next.
Yeah.
So it went over midnight. So as you can imagine, everyone was pretty tasty by the time they got to the game. But yeah, I mean, Ronaldo grabbing the header. I know it's an obvious one, but it was just you know what, I always thought that first half we blew them away.
Yeah.
We really should have been over the hills by the time Lampard got that horrible equaliser.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you know what? When I was looking at the pictures, I can still. It's funny the way you get weird memories. I can still smell that rain, that Moscow rain, exactly how it felt in the stadium, and it did blooming pour down. But yeah, I think you know what it's like in those big matches. You love it when it's finished, but when it's on, it's just so tense. You're so nervy. I was thinking, oh, please, Giggsy, don't miss this penalty after everything. Look, had he equalled or beaten Bobby Charlton's record for appearances that night?
I think he'd equalled it, hadn't he? Come on.
It depends what you count, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think they thought at the time he had beaten it, but then they found out they'd missed one on the stats again. But yeah, I was praying Ando wouldn't miss. I always think, people. Nani was in his first season there. Ando was in his first season there, and they had to take penalties that night.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, absolute magic moments. I flew in the morning, out the next morning. But one of the best days of my life by far, I must say.
Yeah, and any excuse to see Pat in a Russian hat, I'll take it.
And he certainly doesn't miss an opportunity to show himself, does it? Oh, mate,
he loves it, doesn't he?
It was wonderful. Those are the only blooming friendly soldiers there. They were happy to give Pat his hat. You couldn't get a blooming direction out of them. But yeah. Really, really magic night. It just the only thing that I haven't been enjoying is thinking it's been blooming 12 years.
Yeah.
12 years. You think of the wait between 99 and 08 seemed like an eternity. And 9 years, now it's been 12 years. And we were knocking at the door for all those years. So hopefully many, many more nights like that in our lives to come, although we've had enough to last a lifetime, I guess.
Yeah, I always used to think that winning a Champions League on penalties was a bit of a half-assed victory, if you will, but that definitely changed my mind. And
I wonder why you think that, mate.
Yeah.
Because it was always a stick we used to beat Liverpool fans with, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The old you won it against all these dodgy teams and on penalties. But you know what? And the other thing to say is it was the first all English final, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
There was sort of the bubbling of the English game getting better and better and better. It was Mourinho's team, wasn't it? Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
Avram Grant was at the helm, but it was a well drilled team. SEM played right back, tried to mark Ronaldo. And it was a fantastic night, really magic memories. But I hope many more, I must say.
Of course, yeah.
Anyway, thanks for joining us again, everyone. Get subscribed to 100% United Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, we're on Spotify too, if that's easier. Follow our Instagram at United100 Podcast for all the latest from us. We'll be back on Tuesday next week. Until then, thanks for joining me again, Scott.
Thank you, TC.
Take care. Cheerio, Reds.
Tara.